Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation, and today I want to answer some of the questions in the comment section. This is a new thing I'm doing here, so this might come across a little sloppy, but hopefully over time we can get some, if there's more questions, any questions at all, we can try to answer them here on the channel and give you kind of a resource to help you in your guys' games. Now, disclaimer, I don't want to say that any of these rules you should go to a tournament and say, I seen this video, he said this is the way it is. But what I will give you and show you is where I can draw these conclusions from the rules. So if you agree with my interpretation of this rule or ruling, you have a way to be able to show it. And please, at every event, I'll always say this, be respectful to the TOs. They have a lot of questions to answer over the course of the weekend, and they have to make judgment calls. Some of them are wrong. Sometimes they're going to make an incorrect call and come back later and realize that this rule was played a different way. But unfortunately, judges have to make the call on the spot to help keep the game flow going for the entire event. So please don't bash the judge if the call is made incorrect or later on you learn something. This is a very complicated game, and judges, honestly, all over, the fact that they're given their time to run events so that we can get together and play this game, show them the respect for doing this. Honestly, that's a personal feeling to me. Hats off to all the judges out there. Thank you for running 40K events and making it possible for us to play this game competitively that we love. So with that, we're going to jump over into some of the questions and see how we get some answers for some of these little things that we've seen in there. Some of these are rules and 40K related, and some of these are a little bit more elsewise out. Today I have 3 questions. Again, this is the first time I'm doing this, so it's a little sloppy. I'm trying to put it all together and see what I want to do and how I want to present it and things to put up on the screen, all that stuff. So the first question comes from, and I apologize if I butcher anyone's tag, Dway1. And what Dway wanted to know was command points. So for command points, how many do we get over the course of a turn? There's some people who have the interpretation that if you discard a card at the end of the phase, at the end of the turn, to gain a command point, does that count towards your 1 CP gained over the course of the turn? And some people will say no, some will say yes. So my opinion of it, the answer is yes, that counts as your 1 CP that you gain for the course of the turn. And here's how I draw this conclusion. So the first thing we have to do is we're going to break open the big rule book. And now I know that some people may say, oh, what about the FAQs? What about the data sheets, etc.? There's been changes that Games Workshop has made. I did check this on the app. So this is the same. This has stayed the same for it. This way we have a reference point if you want to use your book to look this up. The wording has stayed the same and there has been no changes to this. So during the command phase is when you gain a command point, both you and your opponent. Now, this is page 11 and it's on this on the right side, Over here in this little margin on the side in the gray, gaining command points. Outside of the CP player's gain at the start of the command phase, each player can only gain a total of 1 command point per battle round, regardless of the source. So they're very specific there to say regardless of the source. So it doesn't come down to an ability. It doesn't come down to units, characters, models, etc. It says regardless of the source. So now, because of that, we now have to go to where are we gaining the command point from discarding a card. And that is not in the main rulebook. That is actually in the Leviathan packet that comes with the cards. And if you open this little pamphlet up and you look at number, 11? 12. That was it. I'm sorry. If you look at number 12, it says at the end of each player's turn, if that player is using tactical missions, so this is where you draw, not your fixed, they can discard 1 or more of the secondary missions. If they do, and it's not the 5th battle round, the player gains 1 command point. This represents high command diverting, blah, 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 to engage it. So we have to ask ourselves, is this a source? Is this little paper here a source? To me, yes. To me, this is an ability that is outside of, it specifically states that any command points gained outside of the command point generated during your command phase, you can only gain one. And that's what this is. This is a specifically something that is done at the end of each player's turn. So it's not the command generating, and it's not even a source inside the book. It's a completely different source. It's a completely different pamphlet. So why would they have abilities that gain command points and stuff like that? If you discard a card, you gain a CP. If you have an ability that gains you a command point, you gain a CP. So with both of those combined, if you're playing tactical missions and you have a unit or model that gains it, you're almost reliably giving yourself 3 command points every single turn. That's still very strong. Then on top of that, if you don't have to discard to get yourself back in the command point race, because now you have something here. So if you have a reason with your tactical missions to hold on to something because you could score it later in the game. So to answer the question in the end, I am of the belief that the pamphlet is a separate source that you're gaining command points from. The Leviathan packet and the tactical missions are a separate source that you're gaining command points from. And per the command phase rule on page 11, you can only gain 1 command point regardless of the source. So hopefully that helps out. Hopefully that helps you to, be able to bring resolution to this in your games. The next one is coming from Lushly Necrons. And Lushly Necrons has a question that is not about actually playing the game. It's about getting to the game. And this question was what we recommend and what we use for transporting armies. Now, not sponsored by, but just throwing it out there. Me, Lane, and myself are big fans of Battle Foam and Battle Foam products. Battle Foam offers you a wide variety of options when you want to transport your army. You can find pieces of foam that are cut directly for specific models. On top of it, what's really nice about their stuff is that it fits together nicely. These bricks usually all are consistently the same size. So whatever bag you purchase from them is also built around this. Now, their stuff is not cheap, but it is very good quality. The bag you're getting is very, very durable. The foam, I've had these styrofoam for years. Now, granted, a lot of these are not specific to many of my models. I have actually a piece of Battle Foam that's cut for 3 Dreadnoughts and a Storm Raven. I don't know how many times I've transported Necrons in that. But you start to build up a collection of those, and they become interchangeable in the case, in the box, to transport your models. And you have so many different options for large carrying cases, ones that you can roll in. Everything is there. And again, these cases are very, very durable. Like the one that Lane has now, I think he's had that thing for like 5 or 6 years, and it still looks great. It's in great condition. I have to say, I'm guilty. I don't own a bag. Because every time I have some money to spend on Warhammer, it goes into more and more models. Needless to say, I have a Warlord Titan on my shelf. So yeah, I have a sickness. I have a problem. For me, as I just was, this is how you'll see me come to a tournament. I will have my boxes stacked very, very neatly and move in here and come in like this. But a lot of my friends actually admire this factor because I move from tables very, very nicely. And I always plan that out. And I'm like, all right, I can put these models in here, put these in there. I do have some pieces of steel that I have put magnets on the bottom of some of my miniatures so that they're able to sit on a piece of, so they're able to stand up straight and not move around, and then put them still inside of a piece of foam to transport them in that capacity. That's very similar to the Magna-Rack systems. And Magna-Rack systems are very good. They're expensive. Those are very expensive, and they're an investment they're a long-term investment. You purchase a Magna-Rack, you plan on using that for basically every army you're ever going to transport in a sense. They're very, very nice because they hold the model straight up. And so if you play armies like Eldar, Dark Eldar, got miniatures that have dangly bits that can break, Magnarax are great for that. Because even with foam, they're moving around. And sometimes you may have the model lean a certain way and put weight onto a part that really can't sustain weight. And then you get small breaks on these very, very intricate models. So Magnarax do good for that. They are expensive. So, but they're an investment for the future because now it's not just one army, it's every army. Where with some of the battle foam, while it may be a bit cheaper to purchase pieces of battle foam to switch out for different parts of your army, you're going to accumulate more and more and more to make this happen. Where Magnarax, you're not going to accumulate as much, and you just have to make sure that you maintain magnets on the basis of your models. Sometimes magnets pop off. That's honestly the biggest maintenance flaw for it. But I mean, seriously, if that's the complaint that you have in that scenario of it, that you have to re-glue magnets back on it, honestly, you're having a good day. So for us personally, we use battle foam products, and it's just a matter of where your budget is and how you want to travel in that sense, in that realm. For me, I have a decent budget. When I spend it, I want to buy more models. I'm sorry. So I'm the guy who shows up with a cardboard box with his models in it and stuff like that. Like actually, right here, this is kind of funny. Here's my Grey Knights. My Grey Knights, I don't know if you really can see it. We'll tip it up over here a little bit more as they slide. This is how I'm moving my Grey Knights. Now, granted, I'm moving them around my basement more or less, but I plan on going to a tournament here soon, and I'm most likely to be the passenger. I'm probably just going to take them like this and plop them right on my lap to take them with me. So I'm cheap with that stuff. I need to get better at it. If I really, seriously though, but anytime that I do purchase any sort of transporting material at this point, it's Battle Foam's product. That's where we go. That's where Lane goes. I know a lot of people go there. So I definitely recommend taking a look at them and looking at some of their products and realize, yes, it's a little pricier. You're getting very good quality out of it. And they back their product too. So you get something that's messed up, you contact them, their phone number's on their page. You get a hold of them, you fix it. So moving on to our last question from the three. This one comes from Kaman000. And I saved this one for last because of what it entails. And I kind of want to show this interaction just a little bit here. So Kaman000 asked about combat activations and how to, who activates when and where and how. And I can get where some of this can get confusing because right now we have to brutalize the English language and take it and use pieces and words almost as a command, and how some of this stuff is discussed. So for the question was based on who activates when and how the sequence activates. So the first thing that happens is you have the charge phase. And maybe this question will make more sense as I start to explain the answer. And the question was a very large and encompassing question of how the defending player interacts, when the defending player gets to attack, does the defending player get to consolidate, and stuff like that. And the first thing is that there really is no attacker defender. There is charger and non-charger, and it's very important that we shift the mindset over to not attacker and defender versus charger and non-charger, because that's more important to who activates when. So we move into the charge step first, and we charge with units. So you have 3 units that charge, okay? And you charge 3 separate units. Then you have a 4th unit that is already in combat with a unit that was in combat already. So now, once we complete all of our charges and resolve any charge effects, now we start to get into the fight. So the first thing we do is we have to figure out if a unit is eligible to fight, is eligible to be selected. And the first units that must be selected are units that have the fight first capability. So a unit with the fight first capability is a unit that either A, has the fight first ability on its datasheet, or B, has charged that turn. So we have 3 units that we said successfully charged, okay? And we're going to cut over to a table view so we can point this out a little more and explain this with some models here and show this a little further. Okay, so for this video, we're not going to have, these are not Wraiths, these are not Grey Knights, these are Necron model and Marine model. And for all intents and purposes, the character has fight first capabilities, just for this example. So in this example, we have 3 Necron units. Now, these are not individual model units. We're going to assume that this is like a 5-man, a 5-man, whatever. Doesn't matter. But just so we don't have a whole cluster of units on the table, and we can focus on the order of operations of this, I'm going to use single models to represent an entire unit for this example. So we are going to go to the Necron player's charge phase. So now the Necron player can declare the charges, and we're going to assume all the charges are successful and they successfully make it into engagement range. Now, we're not moving the models into base contact, and we'll come back to that in a second. Why? So now the first thing we do after we complete all our charges and resolve any charge effects that might happen, now we get to determine who will fight. And we alternate fighting with units, starting always with the player whose turn it isn't. So even though the Necron player charged, the Grey Knight player, the Marine player, will get to select the first unit that gets to fight. So now the Grey Knight player can select any units with the fight first capability. Now, these units do not have fight first. Units that have fight first either have it on their data sheet or successfully completed a charge. So at this time, the Necron units that charged have fight first. And so does the character, by whatever ability it may have, has the fight first capability. So the Marine player will get to attack first. So the Marine player attacks and we assume takes down this unit. Now, when the Marine player selects this model to fight, they follow all of the steps, always. Same way every time. I select a unit to fight. They select this model, and they go, okay, well, first, I'm going to pile in. So the pile in is done, and there's another video. I have another video on the channel explaining how all the pile in everything works, but this model piles in. And if it wishes to pile in, it can move up to 3 inches. It must finish its move closer to an enemy model, not the model that it was charging, an enemy model. So it could go in a different direction as long as it finishes that consolidate closer to an enemy, or pile in closer to an enemy unit than it started. Otherwise, you basically have to stand still. You can't go away. Now, once that move is finished, they then make their attacks. Well, let's assume that this model gets destroyed, the unit is dead. Now the unit can then consolidate. The unit can do one of 2 things. First, it can move closer to an enemy unit if that will put it within engagement range. So the single character model over here could move, and by this little 3-inch marker here, it would actually be able to make it within less than an inch, which is engagement range of this other unit that's still alive currently on the table. Now, if that wasn't the case, and this model was not within that 3, at this point in time, the character could then select to consolidate so that it ends its move within range of an objective marker. So it could then go this way and move 3 inches so that it is able to take that objective. If neither scenario is possible, then the unit is not allowed to move at all. If it cannot get an engagement and it cannot make it within range of an objective marker, you cannot move at all, unlike other editions where you could move entirely. All right, so now we move on to the rest of the fight first. So now we go to the Necron player. The Necron player can then select a unit to fight with. So the Necron player selects and fights and wins and kills. At that point, again, the Necron player first would get to pile in with the unit. then consolidate with the model after combat, fight and then fight, then consolidate. When we talk about who is eligible to fight in combat, again, any model that is within engagement range or is in base-to-base contact with a model in engagement range. So again, this model, if in this scenario right here, we'll look down here, this model here is half an inch away from its own friendly model. It's not going to get to attack. But if it's in base-to-base contact and touching, is now able to attack in combat. So, but be generous be friendly to your opponent. If like some of the models have dangly bits that they could definitely move with their in base-to-base contact, don't make people break their models, please. These things are expensive. So now we've resolved this attack. So now it goes back to our opponent. Our opponent can then select any unit with the fight first rule to now fight. Unfortunately, the Marine player has no more units with the fight first capability. So they could spend command points to use one of the generic stratagems to now interrupt and be able to attack with this model. Otherwise, then it goes back to the Necron player to select another unit with fight first, which will be this one, and eliminate the model. This continues until all the fight first models have finished fighting. Once all fight first models, often referred to as chargers, have completed their cycle, now we go to units that have not charged and are still in combat. So now we go over here. And once again, it starts with the player whose turn it isn't. So the Marine would get to pile in, fight, and consolidate in that same manner before the Necron would get to fight. And that would conclude the fight phase. Now, here's another important thing though. Let's say, we'll move some of these models out of the way real quick. So now these two models are locked in combat. And this model over here charges and brings their unit comes into combat. So now we have a combat over here. So when we go to this turn, we select the model that has fight first, which would be our charger. If our charger kills this model, and this unit, I should say, now that model over here that is was within engagement range will not be able to pile in or consolidate because it did not charge. It's very, very specific that only way a model can be activated or chosen in this phase is if it charged or is in engagement range. So once this Necron unit that did not charge is knocked out of engagement range, it can now not activate. However, once again, same similar scenario, we are going to put like this. And this is something I've talked about a couple on the charging video on the channel. We're going to charge with these two. Now, assume that this distance between these is a little bit further. I want to keep everything condensed on the table for this time. But assuming that the distance is a little bit further, okay? And these wraiths both charge. And they charge here, and this one charges here. Now we go and select our fight first guy. So we're going to select this one to fight first. And he wins. Now this comes back to we continue selecting all the models with fight first that charged. Again, the only units to be eligible are units that are within engagement range or charge this turn, which means we can still select this model. Pending, when it piles in, it must end its move within engagement range, or it is not allowed to pile in. So if this unit can make a 3-inch move and be with engagement range of that other unit, even though they didn't declare him as a charger, there's nothing in the game now that stops you from attacking that unit. So that's a little, and again, that's a little bit of a combat trick that I was talking about in another video. If you want to see some other tricks that are there's a video where I talk about all the things in the fight phase and some of that stuff and use larger units to give this example that I would highly recommend and check out. So that's how that stacks. That's how the fight phase will stack for that, and how activations go for it. Hopefully that helps out. Let me know in the comments section. And as well, please leave some more questions on stuff. I really love talking about this and getting models on the table and seeing what we can show. All right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.